Tears and terror, twin girls say, "Mommy is lying here." They escaped. Officer and dog stunned. The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet suburban street of Maple Grove as Officer Sarah Martinez adjusted her radio and prepared for what seemed like another routine patrol. Little did she know that this Tuesday morning would become etched in her memory forever, changing not just her perspective on duty, but on the resilience of the human spirit itself. At exactly 7:42 a.m., the dispatcher's voice crackled through her radio with an urgency that made her pulse quicken. Two young girls, approximately 6 years old, had been found wandering alone on Highway 34, crying hysterically and speaking in broken sentences about their mother. The caller, a truck driver named Mike Henderson, had pulled over when he spotted the tiny figures stumbling along the dangerous roadway in nothing but torn pajamas and bare feet. Officer Martinez immediately changed direction, her patrol car speeding toward the location, while her K-9 partner, Rex, a German Shepherd with 8 years of search and rescue experience, sensed the tension and began alerting in the back seat. Rex had worked hundreds of cases with Martinez, but something about her body language told him this call was different. When Martinez arrived at the scene, she found the truck driver kneeling beside two identical twin girls who couldn't have weighed more than 40 pounds each. Their dark hair was matted with dirt and leaves, their small faces streaked with tears and scratches. What struck her most was their eyes, wide with terror but also with a determination that seemed far beyond their years. The girls clutched each other's hands so tightly their knuckles had turned white. They spoke in whispers, occasionally breaking into sobs, repeating the same phrases over and over. "Mommy is lying here," and "they escaped." Their words came out jumbled, switching between English and what sounded like fragments of another language, making it difficult for anyone to understand exactly what had happened. Martinez knelt down to their eye level, her voice gentle but professional. She had received specialized training in dealing with traumatized children, knowing that the first few minutes of contact could determine whether a child would trust law enforcement enough to provide crucial information. Rex, sensing the delicate situation, lay down nearby, his presence calm and non-threatening. "My name is Officer Martinez," she said softly, "and this is Rex. We're here to help you. Can you tell me your names?" The girls looked at each other, communicating in that silent way twins often do, before the slightly taller one whispered, "I'm Emma, and this is Lily." Their voices were hoarse, suggesting they had been crying or calling out for hours. As Martinez began her preliminary assessment, she noticed several concerning details. Both girls had scrapes on their arms and legs, suggesting they had been running through rough terrain. Their pajamas were torn in multiple places, and they had what appeared to be rope burns around their wrists, though the restraints were no longer present. Most alarming were the bruises on their upper arms, finger-shaped marks that suggested someone had grabbed them forcefully. The truck driver, Mike, provided his account of finding the girls. He had been driving his regular route when he spotted what he initially thought were animals moving along the shoulder of the highway. When he realized they were children, he immediately pulled over and called 911. The girls had been walking in the opposite direction of town, heading toward the rural areas where old farmhouses and abandoned properties dotted the landscape. Martinez radioed for backup and requested that Child Protective Services be notified. But her immediate concern was getting more information from Emma and Lily. Every minute that passed could be crucial if their mother was indeed in danger, as their broken words suggested. She opened her patrol car's first aid kit and began cleaning their minor wounds while asking gentle questions. "Emma, Lily, can you tell me about your mommy? Where did you last see her?" Martinez asked, her voice maintaining that careful balance between urgency and calm. Emma, who seemed to be the spokesperson for the pair, looked up with eyes that held too much knowledge for a 6-year-old. "Bad men came to our house," Emma whispered, glancing nervously at the surrounding area as if expecting someone to appear. "They took Mommy and us to a scary place. Mommy told us to run when they weren't looking. She said to find help." Lily nodded vigorously, adding in an even smaller voice, "Mommy couldn't run. She was hurt." The pieces of a terrifying puzzle began forming in Martinez's mind. This wasn't a case of wandering children or family dispute. This appeared to be a kidnapping situation, possibly involving multiple perpetrators and at least one victim who might still be in immediate danger. She immediately called for additional units and requested that the K-9 search and rescue team be dispatched. Rex, who had been lying quietly, suddenly raised his head and began sniffing the air. His ears perked up and he looked toward the girls with increased interest. Martinez recognized this behavior. Rex had detected something significant. She moved closer to the girls and Rex's interest intensified, particularly around their clothing and hair. "Girls, I need you to think very carefully," Martinez said, her voice taking on a more urgent tone while remaining gentle. "Can you remember anything about the place where you were with your mommy? What did it look like? Were there any buildings, trees, or sounds that you remember?" Emma closed her eyes, concentrating hard. It was dark inside, like a big room with no windows. There were metal things hanging from the ceiling, and it smelled funny, like when Daddy used to fix cars. Lily added, "We could hear trucks sometimes far away, and there was a red door that squeaked really loud." These details were crucial. Martinez made quick notes while simultaneously coordinating with dispatch to begin aerial surveillance of the area. The description suggested an industrial or agricultural building, possibly a warehouse or large garage, within hearing distance of highway traffic, but isolated enough that the children's cries hadn't been heard. As more officers arrived at the scene, Martinez made the decision that would define the next several hours. Rather than immediately transporting the girls to headquarters for formal interviews, she would take them with her and Rex to begin searching the area they had come from. Time was critical, and the girls might recognize landmarks or provide directions that could lead them directly to their mother. The decision was controversial and risky, but Martinez's instincts, honed by years of experience, told her that every minute counted. If the girls were telling the truth, and everything about their condition and behavior suggested they were, then somewhere in the rural landscape ahead of them, a mother was waiting for rescue, possibly fighting for her life. As they prepared to begin what would become one of the most challenging searches of Martinez's career, Rex stood alert beside the patrol car, his nose working the scents that clung to the girls' clothing. Whatever had happened to this family, the dog's behavior indicated that the trail was still fresh and the perpetrators might still be close by. The search begins. Officer Martinez made a decision that would later be questioned by her superiors, but ultimately praised by everyone involved in the case. Instead of following standard protocol and taking Emma and Lily directly to the station, she chose to keep them with her and begin searching immediately. The girls had been walking for hours, possibly all night, and their mother's life might depend on the speed of the response. Rex jumped into the back of the patrol car with practiced ease, while Martinez gently helped the twins into the front seat, ensuring they were securely buckled in. She grabbed 2 emergency blankets from her trunk, wrapping them around the shivering girls despite the warm morning air. Shock and trauma often made victims feel cold regardless of the temperature. "We're going to drive slowly along the road where you were walking," Martinez explained to Emma and Lily. "I want you to look out the windows and tell me if anything looks familiar. Don't be scared. Rex and I won't let anything bad happen to you." The girls nodded solemnly, their small hands still clasped together as they peered out through the windshield. As they began driving back along Highway 34, Martinez radioed her location and intentions to dispatch. Additional units were being organized to create a search perimeter, but she wanted to get an initial assessment of the area while the trail was still fresh. Rex's behavior in the back seat had become increasingly alert. His nose pressed against the partially opened window as he processed scents that humans couldn't detect. The landscape along this stretch of highway was a mixture of farmland, wooded areas, and abandoned industrial properties. Several old grain elevators stood empty against the sky, their metal sides rusted and paint peeling. Scattered farmhouses, some occupied and others clearly deserted, dotted the rolling hills. It was exactly the type of terrain where someone could hide victims without fear of discovery. After driving for about 10 minutes, Lily suddenly grabbed Emma's arm and pointed toward a dirt road that branched off from the highway. "That road," she whispered urgently. "We came from there." Emma nodded vigorously, adding, "Yes, but we had to hide in the trees because we heard cars coming." Martinez turned onto the narrow dirt road, immediately noticing fresh tire tracks in the soft earth. Multiple vehicles had traveled this route recently, and at least one appeared to be a larger truck or van. She radioed the location to dispatch and requested that crime scene investigators be prepared to process tire impressions. The Road wound through dense woods for nearly a mile, before opening into a cleared area where several buildings were visible. Rex's excitement level increased dramatically, and he began whining softly, his signal that he had detected scents associated with distressed humans. Martinez's pulse quickened as she recognized the implications of the dog's behavior. "Do you see anything you remember?" Martinez asked the girls, who were both straining to look through the windows. Emma pointed toward a cluster of buildings in the distance. "That big brown building," she said. "I think that's where they kept us, but I'm not sure. Everything looks different in the daylight." Martinez parked the patrol car behind a stand of trees, keeping it hidden from view of the buildings while maintaining visual contact. She radioed for backup and requested that additional K-9 units respond to her location. If armed perpetrators were still in the area, she would need support before attempting any rescue operation. While waiting for backup, Martinez used her binoculars to study the buildings. The main structure appeared to be an old agricultural warehouse, exactly matching the girl's description of a large room with metal fixtures hanging from the ceiling. Several vehicles were parked nearby, including a white van and a pickup truck. More concerning, she could see movement around one of the smaller buildings, indicating that people were definitely still in the area. Rex's agitation was becoming more pronounced, and Martinez realized that the dog was detecting not just the scents from the girl's recent presence, but active human distress signals coming from the direction of the buildings. Someone was there, and based on Rex's training and experience, that person was in serious trouble. "Girls, I need you to stay very quiet and listen carefully," Martinez whispered, turning to face Emma and Lily. "I think your mommy might be in that big building over there. I'm going to call for more police officers to come help us, and we're going to get her out safely. But I need you to promise me that you'll stay in this car no matter what happens." "Can you promise me that?" Both girls nodded solemnly, their eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. Emma spoke for both of them. "We promise. Just please help our mommy. The bad men were really mean to her, and she couldn't walk very good when they brought us to the scary place." The mention of their mother being unable to walk properly sent a chill through Martinez. This suggested serious injury or restraint, raising the stakes considerably. She checked her weapon and radio, ensuring everything was ready while keeping one eye on the buildings in the distance. Within 15 minutes, 3 additional patrol cars arrived at Martinez's location, along with a second K-9 unit featuring Officer James Thompson and his partner, Bruno, a Belgian Malinois specialized in tracking and apprehension. The officers gathered around Martinez's car for a quick briefing, speaking in low voices to avoid alerting anyone in the buildings. "Based on the girl's statements and Rex's behavior, we have at least one victim, possibly injured, being held in that warehouse," Martinez explained. "Unknown number of perpetrators, but the girls mentioned bad men, plural, so we're looking at multiple suspects. Fresh tire tracks suggest recent activity, and I observed movement around the smaller building." Sergeant Davis, the senior officer on scene, made the tactical decisions. 2 officers would approach from the rear of the property, while Martinez and Thompson, with their K-9 partners, would advance from the front. The girls would remain with Officer Rodriguez in a patrol car positioned for quick evacuation if necessary. As they prepared to move, Rex and Bruno both became increasingly excited, their training and instincts telling them that they were about to engage in the work they had been bred and trained to do. Martinez felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that accompanied high-risk operations. But this case felt different because of the personal connection she had already formed with Emma and Lily. The officers began their approach, using the natural cover of trees and abandoned farm equipment to mask their movements. Martinez kept Rex on a short lead, trusting the dog's superior senses to alert her to any immediate dangers while they closed the distance to the warehouse. As they moved closer, sounds began to emerge from the main building, muffled voices, the scrape of metal on concrete, and what sounded like someone crying or moaning. Rex's body language confirmed what Martinez's ears were detecting. There were definitely people inside the building, and at least one of them was in distress. The warehouse had several entrances, including a large rolling door, obviously designed for vehicle access, and 2 smaller personnel doors on different sides of the building. Windows were few and set high in the walls, making it difficult to assess the interior situation without exposing themselves to observation from inside. Martinez and Thompson positioned themselves on either side of the main personnel entrance, while the other officers moved to secure the rear exits. The sound of voices inside became clearer, though the words were still indistinct. What was clear was that at least two different male voices were engaged in what sounded like an argument, while a female voice, and weaker and intermittent, could also be heard. The moment had arrived when months of training, years of experience, and the urgent need to save a mother's life would come together in whatever was waiting inside that warehouse. Inside the warehouse, the tension was so thick it felt like the air itself was holding its breath as Officer Martinez pressed her ear against the cold metal door of the warehouse. Through the thin barrier, voices became clearer, and what she heard made her blood run cold. Two men were arguing loudly, their words now distinguishable enough to understand the horror of the situation. "I told you this was a stupid idea from the beginning," one voice growled, deep and rough like gravel. "Now we got cops probably looking everywhere because those little brats got away." The second voice, higher pitched and nervous, responded with panic evident in every syllable. "They can't have gone far. They're just kids. We can find them and fix this whole mess." But it was the third voice that confirmed Martinez's worst fears. Weak, trembling, but unmistakably female. "Please," the woman whispered, "just let me go. I won't tell anyone anything. My daughters need me." The sound of that mother's voice, broken but still fighting for her children even in captivity, strengthened Martinez's resolve. Rex remained perfectly still beside her, his training keeping him silent despite every instinct telling him to act. The dog's ears were pinned forward, processing not just the sounds but the scents flowing from beneath the door. Fear, sweat, blood, and something else that made his hackles raise slightly. Someone inside was badly hurt. Officer Thompson had positioned himself at the rear entrance with Bruno, while Sergeant Davis and Officer Williams covered the vehicle bay door that dominated the front of the building. The plan was simple but dangerous. Simultaneous entry from multiple points to prevent escape and minimize the risk to the victim. Martinez's radio crackled softly with Thompson's voice. "Movement visible through rear window. I count 2 subjects, both male, adult. Cannot see victim clearly but can confirm female voice matches your assessment. One suspect appears to be holding something metallic, possibly a weapon." The confirmation that weapons were involved changed the dynamic completely. Martinez adjusted her grip on her service weapon, while keeping Rex's lead wrapped around her wrist. The dog was trained to respond to both voice commands and hand signals, allowing for silent coordination even in high-stress situations. Sergeant Davis's voice came through the radio with the authorization they had been waiting for. "All units, we have confirmation of kidnapping in progress, possible weapon present, victim in immediate danger. Proceed with coordinated entry on my mark." The seconds stretched like hours as each officer prepared for what would unfold in the next few moments. 3, 2, 1, execute. Martinez threw open the personnel door and burst into the warehouse with Rex at her side, while simultaneously Thompson crashed through the rear entrance and Davis activated the electric opener for the vehicle bay. The coordinated entry created exactly the confusion and shock they had hoped for, but what they found inside was worse than anyone had imagined. The warehouse had been converted into a makeshift prison. Heavy chains hung from the ceiling beams. Restraints were bolted to concrete posts, and in the center of the space, a woman who could only be Emma and Lily's mother sat tied to a metal chair. Her face was swollen and bruised, her clothes torn, and her left leg was bent at an unnatural angle, suggesting a serious fracture. 2 men stood near her, both spinning in confusion as law enforcement poured in from 3 directions. The larger man, matching the description of the deeper voice they had heard, held what appeared to be a crowbar and was positioned as if he had been threatening the victim. The smaller man, younger and clearly the more nervous of the 2, stood near a table covered with rope, duct tape, and other restraint materials. "Police, drop your weapons and get on the ground now," Martinez shouted, her voice carrying the authority of 8 years in law enforcement. Rex remained at her side but ready to respond instantly to any command. The dog's presence alone was often enough to discourage suspects from resisting, but these 2 seemed desperate enough to consider fighting. The larger suspect, later identified as Carl Morrison, a man with an extensive criminal record including previous kidnapping charges, raised the crowbar above his head. "You cops don't understand what you're walking into here," he yelled. "This lady owes some very dangerous people a lot of money, and we're just collecting what's owed." Martinez kept her weapon trained on Morrison, while simultaneously assessing the condition of the victim. The woman, who would later be identified as Maria Santos, a single mother working 2 jobs to support her twin daughters, was conscious but clearly in severe pain. Her eyes, though swollen nearly shut, found Martinez's face and filled with desperate hope. "My babies," Maria whispered through cracked lips. "Please tell me my babies are safe." The raw emotion in her voice hit Martinez like a physical blow, but she maintained her professional composure while providing the reassurance this mother desperately needed. "Emma and Lily are safe," Martinez called out clearly, loud enough for Maria to hear despite the chaos. "They're brave girls and they led us right to you. You're going to see them again very soon." The effect of these words on Maria was immediate. Her shoulders sagged with relief even as tears began flowing down her battered face. The second suspect, identified as Tommy Chen, suddenly bolted toward a side exit that the officers hadn't been able to cover. Thompson released Bruno with a single command, and the Belgian Malinois covered the distance in seconds, bringing Chen down with a perfectly executed takedown that prevented escape while minimizing injury. Morrison, seeing his partner's capture, seemed to realize that his situation was hopeless, but instead of surrendering, he made the decision that transformed this rescue operation into a life-or-death situation. He turned toward Maria, raising the crowbar with clear intent to harm the victim before law enforcement could stop him. "If I'm going down, she's coming with me," Morrison screamed, the crowbar beginning its downward arc toward Maria's defenseless head. This was the moment that Rex had been trained for throughout his entire career, the split-second decision point where a police dog's intervention could mean the difference between life and death for an innocent victim. Martinez didn't need to give a command. Rex read her body language, assessed the threat, and launched himself across the warehouse floor in a powerful leap that would be remembered by everyone present for the rest of their lives. The German Shepherd covered the 12-foot distance in less than 2 seconds. His 90 pounds of muscle and training focused on one objective: stopping the threat to the victim. The impact of Rex hitting Morrison knocked the crowbar from the suspect's hands and sent both the dog and the man tumbling away from Maria's chair. The crowbar clattered across the concrete floor, coming to rest harmlessly several feet away from where it could have ended a mother's life. Morrison struggled beneath Rex's weight, but the dog had been trained to maintain control without causing unnecessary injury. Rex held the suspect down while Martinez moved to secure him with handcuffs. The coordination between officer and K-9 partner, demonstrating years of trust and training. With both suspects in custody, the immediate threat was over, but Maria's ordeal was far from finished. Emergency medical services, which had been standing by during the operation, rushed into the warehouse to begin treating her injuries. The extent of her physical trauma was becoming clear. In addition to the obvious broken leg, she had sustained multiple bruises, cuts, and what appeared to be signs of prolonged dehydration and stress. As paramedics worked to stabilize Maria for transport to the hospital, Martinez knelt beside the chair where the brave mother was still restrained. "Maria, your daughters are waiting for you. They never stopped believing we would find you, and they never stopped being brave. You raised incredible little girls." Maria's response, whispered through pain but clear in its gratitude, would stay with Martinez forever. "Thank you for bringing me back to my babies. Thank you for giving me the chance to hold them again." The simple words carried the weight of a mother's love and the profound relief of a nightmare finally ending. But even as the rescue phase concluded successfully, Martinez realized that this case was far from over. The investigation into how and why Maria Santos had been kidnapped was just beginning, and the answers would reveal a web of crime that stretched far beyond this abandoned warehouse. The reunion and revelation, the drive back to where Emma and Lily waited, felt like the longest journey Officer Martinez had ever taken, despite lasting only 15 minutes. In the passenger seat of the ambulance that followed behind her patrol car, Maria Santos was receiving emergency medical treatment while being transported to St. Mary's Hospital. The paramedics had stabilized her condition, but her injuries required immediate surgery to repair the fractured leg and address internal complications from the prolonged captivity. Rex sat alertly in the back seat, his job complete, but his protective instincts still engaged. The German Shepherd seemed to understand the significance of what had just occurred, occasionally looking toward the ambulance behind them as if ensuring their rescued victim was still safe. Martinez had worked with Rex long enough to recognize when the dog felt personally invested in a case, and this rescue had clearly affected him deeply. When they arrived at the location where the girls had been waiting with Officer Rodriguez, Martinez could see two small faces pressed against the patrol car windows. Emma and Lily had been watching the road anxiously, and the moment they spotted the ambulance following Martinez's car, they knew something important was happening. "Is that our mommy?" Emma asked as Martinez opened the car door. The hope in her voice was mixed with fear. These girls had been through trauma that no 6-year-old should experience, and they had learned that hope could sometimes lead to disappointment. Martinez knelt down to their level, choosing her words carefully. "Yes, that's your mommy in the ambulance," she said gently. "She's hurt and needs to go to the hospital so doctors can make her feel better, but she's alive and she's safe. She asked me to tell you how proud she is of both of you for being so brave and for helping us find her." The twins looked at each other with that silent communication they shared, then back at Martinez. Lily, who had been quieter throughout the ordeal, suddenly spoke up. "Can we see her? We want to tell her we're okay." The simple request carried so much weight. These children needed to confirm with their own eyes that their mother was truly safe, just as she needed to see them. Martinez made another decision that would later be questioned by protocol, but was absolutely right for the situation. She walked to the ambulance and spoke quietly with the lead paramedic, explaining the psychological importance of allowing the children to see their mother before transport to the hospital. The paramedic, a veteran named Tom Walsh who had children of his own, immediately understood. "We can give them 2 minutes," he said. "Her condition is stable enough for a brief reunion, and honestly, seeing her daughters might be the best medicine she could get right now." When the ambulance doors opened, Maria Santos was lying on a stretcher with various medical equipment monitoring her condition. Her face was still swollen and discolored from the beating she had endured, and her left leg was immobilized in a temporary splint. But when she saw Emma and Lily climbing carefully into the ambulance, her eyes lit up with a joy that transformed her battered features. "My angels," she whispered, her voice hoarse but filled with emotion. "My brave, smart, beautiful angels." The girls moved to either side of the stretcher, careful not to disturb the medical equipment, and gently placed their small hands on their mother's arms. The reunion was tender and heartbreaking. 3 people who had survived something terrible together and were now safe. Emma, always the spokesperson, looked directly at her mother. "Mommy, we did what you told us. We ran and found help, just like you said." Maria's eyes filled with tears as she realized the courage her 6-year-old daughters had shown. They had walked for hours in the dark, navigated dangerous terrain, and trusted strangers to help them, all because she had taught them to be strong and smart. "You did everything perfectly," Maria told them, her voice gaining strength. "I am so proud of you both. You saved us all by being brave." Lily, typically quieter, leaned close to her mother's ear and whispered something that made Maria smile despite her pain. Later, Maria would tell Martinez that Lily had whispered, "We knew the police would help because you always told us police officers are the good guys." The 2 minutes stretched to 5 before the paramedics gently indicated that they needed to transport Maria to the hospital. The girls understood and climbed out of the ambulance, but not before each giving their mother a careful kiss on her forehead. "We'll be right behind you," Martinez promised. "Maria, these girls won't be out of your sight for long." As the ambulance departed with its lights flashing but silent, Maria was stable and the immediate emergency had passed. Martinez began the process of arranging temporary care for Emma and Lily. Child Protective Services had been notified, but given the circumstances and the girls' remarkable resilience, the goal was to keep them as close to their mother as possible during her recovery. During the drive to the hospital, with Emma and Lily now riding in the front seat of Martinez's patrol car and Rex watching protectively from behind, the girls began talking more freely about their ordeal. The information they provided would prove crucial to understanding not just what had happened to their family, but uncovering a larger criminal operation. "The bad men came to our house 3 days ago," Emma explained, her voice steady now that she knew her mother was safe. "They said Mommy owed them money, but Mommy said she didn't know what they were talking about. They got really mad and said someone told them she had taken something that belonged to them. This revelation immediately caught Martinez's attention. The suspects in custody, Morrison and Chen, had mentioned that Maria owed money to dangerous people. But Maria was a hard-working single mother with 2 jobs and no known involvement in criminal activity. Either there was a case of mistaken identity, or someone had deliberately targeted her family for reasons that weren't yet clear. Lily added details that painted a picture of organized criminal activity. They had pictures of our house and they knew Mommy's name and where she worked. They knew we were twins and they knew we went to Sunshine Elementary School. The level of surveillance and preparation suggested this wasn't a random crime but a carefully planned kidnapping. As they arrived at St. Mary's Hospital, Martinez realized that the rescue of Maria Santos and her daughters was just the beginning of a much larger investigation. The questions raised by the girls' statement suggested connections to organized crime, possible identity theft, or a case of mistaken identity that had put an innocent family in mortal danger. Rex jumped out of the patrol car with his usual efficiency, and Martinez noticed that both Emma and Lily had become attached to the German Shepherd during their time together. "Can Rex visit us sometimes?" Emma asked as they walked toward the hospital entrance. "He's a hero dog and we want to thank him properly." The request touched Martinez deeply, and she realized that this case had created bonds that would last far beyond the official investigation. "Rex would love to visit you," she promised. "Police dogs like Rex love meeting the people they help rescue. You're part of his family now, too." Inside the hospital, Maria was being prepared for surgery while Child Services worked to arrange temporary housing for the twins. The ideal solution would be to place them with relatives, but initial checks had revealed that Maria's family lived in another state, and the girls' father had been absent from their lives since they were infants. Dr. Jennifer Park, the orthopedic surgeon who would be repairing Maria's leg, took time to explain the situation to Martinez and the Child Services representative. "Mrs. Santos has sustained significant trauma, both physical and psychological. Her recovery will take weeks, possibly months, but she's strong and motivated. Having her daughters close by will actually accelerate her healing process." The hospital's family services coordinator had arranged for Emma and Lily to stay in the special family housing unit normally reserved for families of long-term patients. This would allow them to be near their mother while she recovered and provide the stability they needed after their traumatic experience. As Martinez prepared to leave the hospital that evening, having completed her initial reports and ensured the family was settled, Emma and Lily ran up to her one final time. "Officer Martinez," Emma said with the seriousness that seemed to characterize everything about these remarkable children, "thank you for believing us and for finding our mommy. We won't forget you and Rex ever." The simple gratitude of 2 6-year-old girls who had shown incredible courage in the face of terror was more meaningful than any commendation Martinez had ever received. But as she drove home that night with Rex sleeping peacefully in the back seat, she knew that the investigation into who had targeted the Santos family and why was just beginning. Uncovering the truth. 3 days after the rescue, Officer Martinez sat in the detective bureau reviewing case files that painted a picture far more complex than anyone had initially imagined. The investigation into Maria Santos's kidnapping had revealed connections to a sophisticated identity theft ring that had been operating across 3 states for over 2 years. Detective Lisa Chen, no relation to suspect Tommy Chen despite sharing a surname, had been assigned as the lead investigator. She was a 15-year veteran with specialized training in financial crimes and organized criminal enterprises. Her initial interview with the suspects had uncovered information that completely changed their understanding of why the Santos family had been targeted. "Martinez, you need to see this," Detective Chen called from her desk, holding up a thick folder of documents. "Our suspects Morrison and Tommy Chen weren't working alone, and Maria Santos wasn't their intended target. This whole thing was a case of mistaken identity that nearly cost an innocent woman her life." The evidence was spread across Chen's desk like pieces of a puzzle that was finally coming together. Bank records, surveillance photos, phone records, and witness statements created a timeline that revealed the truth behind the Santos family's nightmare. According to Morrison's statement, given in exchange for a reduced sentence recommendation, their criminal organization had been tracking someone named Maria Santana, not Maria Santos. Santana was allegedly a bookkeeper for a drug trafficking operation who had disappeared with nearly $200,000 in cash and detailed records of the organization's financial transactions. The resemblance is remarkable, Detective Chen explained, showing Martinez two photographs side by side. Maria Santos and Maria Santana could have been sisters. Same height, same basic build, similar facial features, and both were single mothers with children. The criminal organization had been conducting surveillance on what they thought was their target, not realizing they were watching the wrong woman entirely. The mix-up had occurred when Maria Santos had moved to Maple Grove 6 months earlier, taking a job at the same grocery store where Maria Santana had briefly worked before disappearing. The criminals had been watching the store, saw someone matching their target's description, and began following her home. Their surveillance had been thorough but focused on the wrong person. So where is the real Maria Santana? Martinez asked, studying the evidence spread across the desk. Detective Chen's expression grew serious as she pulled out another set of documents. That's where this gets even more interesting. We've been in contact with federal authorities, and it turns out Maria Santana entered witness protection 8 months ago. She's been cooperating with a federal investigation into the drug trafficking ring that Morrison and Chen work. For the revelation that federal authorities were involved added another layer of complexity to the case. The kidnapping of Maria Santos wasn't just a case of mistaken identity. It had potentially compromised an ongoing federal investigation into organized crime. FBI agent David Rodriguez had arrived that morning to coordinate with local law enforcement and ensure that all aspects of the case were properly handled. Agent Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran of federal law enforcement, explained the broader implications during a briefing with the local officers. The organization that Morrison and Chen work for is part of a multi-state drug trafficking network that we've been investigating for 3 years. Maria Santana's cooperation has been crucial to our case, but now that their operatives have been arrested in connection with kidnapping the wrong person, they know law enforcement is closing in. The federal investigation had identified at least 12 members of the criminal organization, with operations spanning from California to Ohio. Maria Santana had been their financial record keeper, maintaining detailed accounts of drug transactions, money laundering operations, and the distribution network. When she realized the full extent of what she was involved in, she had contacted federal authorities and agreed to cooperate. In exchange for protection for herself and her teenage son, Martinez learned that the criminal organization had put a $50,000 bounty on finding Maria Santana, which explained the thorough surveillance that had ultimately targeted the wrong woman. Morrison and Chen were low-level operatives who had been promised a substantial payment for locating their target, but their desperation to collect the bounty had led to sloppy work and the tragic case of mistaken identity. The good news, Agent Rodriguez continued, is that Morrison's arrest has given us access to communication records that will help us identify and locate other members of the organization. The bad news is that they now know their security has been compromised, and they're likely to either go underground or accelerate their operations. Detective Chen had spent the previous day interviewing Maria Santos from her hospital bed, carefully documenting every detail of her kidnapping to build the strongest possible case against her captors. Despite her physical condition, Maria had been remarkably clear and detailed in her recollections, providing information that would be crucial for prosecution. Maria told us that Morrison repeatedly asked her about money and records that she knew nothing about, Detective Chen reported. He became increasingly frustrated when she couldn't provide information about financial transactions or contact information for other people in the organization. That's when the violence escalated. The psychological evaluation conducted by the hospital's trauma specialist, Dr. Rachel Kim, revealed that Maria had endured not just physical abuse, but systematic psychological torture designed to break down her resistance. The criminals had threatened her daughters repeatedly, describing in detail what would happen to Emma and Lily if Maria didn't cooperate with their demands for information she simply didn't possess. The strength this woman showed under impossible circumstances is remarkable, Dr. Kim told Martinez during a consultation about Maria's recovery. She maintained her story consistently, never giving them false information even when it might have temporarily stopped the abuse. She knew that lying would only make things worse for her daughters if they were recaptured. Martinez had visited Maria and the twins daily since the rescue, both as part of her official duties and because she had formed a personal connection with the family. Rex had accompanied her on several visits, and the German Shepherd had become a source of comfort for all three family members. The girls had named him their hero dog and drew pictures of him that now decorated Maria's hospital room. During her most recent visit, Maria had shared information that provided another crucial piece of the puzzle. "Officer Martinez," she had said, "I keep thinking about something one of the men said during the first day. He was talking on the phone to someone and he said, 'We got the wrong one, but she looks close enough that nobody will know the difference.' At the time, I thought he was just being cruel, but now I understand what he meant." This statement confirmed that the criminals had realized their mistake early in the kidnapping, but had decided to proceed anyway, hoping they could force Maria to provide information or perhaps use her as leverage against the real Maria Santana. The callous calculation involved in that decision to continue torturing an innocent woman and traumatizing her children even after realizing the error demonstrated the ruthless nature of the organization they were dealing with. Agent Rodriguez had arranged for additional security at the hospital where Maria was recovering, recognizing that the criminal organization might attempt to eliminate witnesses or try to use the family as bargaining chips. 2 federal marshals were positioned discreetly in the hospital, and Maria's room was equipped with additional security monitoring. The twins had adjusted remarkably well to their temporary living situation in the hospital's family housing unit. But the trauma counselor working with them had identified signs of hypervigilance and anxiety that would require ongoing support. Emma had become even more protective of her sister, while Lily had developed a reluctance to be separated from adults she trusted. "These children have been through something that most adults couldn't handle," the counselor, Dr. Michael Torres, explained to Martinez. "Their resilience is extraordinary, but they're going to need continued support as they process what happened to them. The good news is that they have a strong mother who survived, and they know they were instrumental in her rescue. That sense of agency and success will be crucial for their long-term recovery." The legal proceedings were moving forward rapidly, with both Morrison and Chen facing federal charges in addition to state charges for kidnapping, assault, and child endangerment. Morrison's cooperation with federal authorities had resulted in a plea agreement, but he was still looking at 25 years to life in prison. Chen, who had maintained his innocence despite overwhelming evidence, was facing trial on all charges. As Martinez reviewed the case files one more time, she reflected on how a routine patrol had led to uncovering a major federal investigation and saving the lives of 3 innocent people. The case had also highlighted the importance of trusting instincts, acting quickly in crisis situations, and the incredible bond between police officers and their canine partners. Rex had become something of a celebrity in the department, but the German Shepherd C. Justice and new beginnings. 6 months after that terrifying morning when 2 small girls stumbled onto Highway 34, the courtroom was packed with law enforcement officials, federal agents, reporters, and supporters who had followed the Santos family's journey from victim to survivor to advocate. Today was the sentencing hearing for Carl Morrison, the last of the criminals involved in the kidnapping to face justice. Officer Martinez sat in the front row with Rex beside her, both wearing their dress uniforms for the formal proceeding. The German Shepherd had been officially recognized by the city for his role in the rescue, but more importantly to Martinez, he had become a permanent part of the Santos family's extended support network. Maria Santos walked into the courtroom without assistance for the first time since her rescue, her recovery both physical and emotional nearly complete. The months of physical therapy had restored full function to her previously broken leg, while counseling had helped her process the trauma of her captivity. But perhaps most remarkably, she had transformed her experience into a mission to help other victims of violent crime. Emma and Lily, now 7 years old and thriving in 2nd grade, sat with their mother. They had grown taller and stronger, their faces fuller and happier than they had been during those desperate hours 6 months ago. Both girls wore small pins on their jackets, miniature police badges that Martinez had presented to them, honorary recognition for their courage in leading law enforcement to their mother's rescue. The federal investigation had been a complete success, with all 12 members of the criminal organization now either convicted or awaiting trial. Maria Santana, the real target of the kidnapping plot, had testified from witness protection via secure video link. her cooperation helping to dismantle a drug trafficking network that had operated for years across multiple states. Judge Patricia Hawkins, a veteran of 30 years on the bench, had presided over numerous violent crime cases, but she acknowledged that the Santos kidnapping had elements that made it particularly disturbing. As she prepared to announce Morrison's sentence, she addressed the packed courtroom with words that captured the significance of the case. "This case represents both the worst and best of human nature," Judge Hawkins began. "We have seen the depths to which criminals will sink, targeting an innocent family and traumatizing children in pursuit of money and power. But we have also witnessed extraordinary courage from 6-year-old girls who refused to abandon their mother, law enforcement officers who trusted their instincts and acted quickly, and a mother who endured unspeakable treatment rather than give her captors information she didn't possess." Morrison sat at the defendant's table. His appearance dramatically changed from the threatening figure he had been during the rescue. Months in custody had diminished his intimidating presence, and the cooperation he had provided to federal authorities had earned him some consideration in sentencing, though not enough to avoid decades in prison. Tommy Chen had been sentenced 3 months earlier after refusing a plea agreement and being convicted on all charges. He was currently serving a 35-year federal sentence with no possibility of parole for 25 years. His decision to maintain his innocence despite overwhelming evidence had resulted in the maximum penalty allowed under federal guidelines. When called upon to address the court, Maria Santos rose gracefully and walked to the witness stand. Her victim impact statement had been prepared carefully, not just to describe the harm she and her daughters had suffered, but to advocate for other victims and highlight the importance of the criminal justice system's response to violent crime. "Your Honor," Maria began, her voice clear and strong. "6 months ago, my daughters and I were living our normal life. I was working 2 jobs to support us. The girls were doing well in school and we were happy. In one night, strangers invaded our home and destroyed that sense of security forever." She described the 3 days of captivity in terms that were honest, about the trauma but focused on the strength she had discovered within herself. "I was beaten and threatened, but the worst part was knowing that my 6-year-old daughters were witnessing violence and hearing threats against their lives. No child should ever experience that kind of terror." But Maria's statement shifted from describing victimization to celebrating survival and resilience. "However, this experience has also shown me the incredible capacity for courage that exists in all of us. My daughters walked for hours in the dark to find help. Police officers and their canine partners risked their lives to save us. FBI agents worked tirelessly to ensure that other families wouldn't suffer what we suffered." She turned toward Morrison at the defendant's table, making direct eye contact for the first time since her rescue. "Mr. Morrison, you and your associates tried to break our family, but you made us stronger instead. You tried to silence us, but we found our voices. You tried to isolate us, but we discovered a community of support we never knew existed." Martinez felt tears forming in her eyes as she listened to Maria's words. The transformation from the broken woman they had rescued to the confident advocate standing before the court was remarkable. Rex sensed her emotional response and pressed closer against her leg, providing the comfort that had made him such an effective therapy dog during the family's recovery. Emma and Lily had also been invited to address the court, though the judge had made it clear that their participation was entirely voluntary given their age. Both girls had chosen to speak, their statements prepared with the help of their trauma counselor, but delivered in their own words. Emma approached the microphone with the same serious demeanor she had shown throughout the ordeal. "Judge, my name is Emma Santos, and this is about the bad men who took our mommy. We were really scared, but we remembered what mommy taught us, about being strong and asking for help when we need it." Her brief statement focused on the positive aspects of their experience, the kindness of the truck driver who found them, the care shown by Officer Martinez and Rex, the support of hospital staff and counselors. "We learned that there are more good people than bad people in the world," Emma concluded, "and that police officers and police dogs are heroes who help kids like us." Lily's statement was shorter but equally powerful. "I want to thank Officer Martinez and Rex for finding our mommy. Rex is the best dog in the world and he visits us all the time now. We're not scared anymore because we know there are good people who will help us if bad things happen." The sentencing phase concluded with Judge Hawkins announcing Morrison's punishment: 30 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 22 years. to be followed by 10 years of supervised probation. The sentence reflected both the severity of his crimes and the cooperation he had provided in dismantling the larger criminal organization. As the court session ended, Martinez approached the Santos family in the courthouse hallway. The past 6 months had created bonds that extended far beyond the professional relationship between officer and victim. Emma and Lily immediately ran to Rex, who greeted them with the gentle enthusiasm he reserved for his favorite humans. "Officer Martinez," Maria said, "I know we've thanked you many times, but I want you to know that you gave us back our lives. Not just by rescuing us, but by showing us that we could trust in the goodness of others again." Martinez hugged Maria warmly, then knelt down to embrace Emma and Lily. "You three are the heroes in this story," she told them. "You never gave up, you took care of each other, and you showed everyone what real courage looks like." The Santos family had moved to a new home in a safer neighborhood, with Maria now working as a victim advocate for the district attorney's office. Her first-hand experience with violent crime and her natural empathy made her uniquely qualified to help other families navigate the criminal justice system. Emma and Lily were thriving in their new school, their experience having given them a maturity and confidence that served them well. Rex had officially been assigned as a therapy dog in addition to his regular police duties, visiting schools and hospitals to provide comfort to children who had experienced trauma. His bond with the Santos family remained special, with regular visits that had become a highlight for both the dog and the twins. As they walked out of the courthouse together, Martinez reflected on how a single morning patrol had led to this moment of justice and renewal. The case had reminded her why she had chosen law enforcement as a career, not just to catch criminals, but to protect the innocent and help families rebuild their lives after tragedy. The Santos family's story had become a symbol of resilience and hope in their community. Their experience demonstrated that while evil exists in the world, it is ultimately overcome by the courage of ordinary people who choose to do the right thing. Whether they are 6-year-old girls walking through the darkness to find help, or police officers and their canine partners who never stop fighting for justice. Standing in the afternoon sunlight outside the courthouse, watching Emma and Lily play with Rex while their mother spoke with reporters about victim advocacy, Martinez knew that this case would stay with her for the rest of her career. It had shown her the very best of what law enforcement could achieve when training, instinct, and genuine care for others came together at exactly the right moment. The tea.